I'm Bill Best. Scripture is from the New American Standard Bible, copyright 1995 by the Lockman Foundation. Used by permission, all rights reserved.
For more, visit billbest.net.
Genesis 8, verse 1. But God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the cattle that were with him in the ark. And God caused a wind to pass over the earth, and the water subsided. Genesis 8, verse 1. Genesis 17, verse 19. But God said, No, but Sarah your wife will bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. Genesis 17, verse 19. Genesis 20, verse 3. But God came to Abimelech in a dream of the night and said to him, Behold, you are a dead man, because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is married. Genesis 20, verse 3. Genesis 21, verse 12. But God said to Abraham, Do not be distressed because of the lad and your maid. Whatever Sarah tells you, listen to her. For through Isaac your descendants shall be named. Genesis 21, verse 12. Genesis 45, verse 8. Now, therefore, it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his household, and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Genesis 45, verse 8. Genesis 48, verse 21. Then Israel said to Joseph, Behold, I am about to die, but God will be with you and bring you back to the land of your fathers. Genesis 48, verse 21. Genesis 50, verses 18 through 21. Then his brothers also came and fell down before him and said, Behold, we are your servants. But Joseph said to them, Do not be afraid, for am I in God's place? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring about this present result, to preserve many people alive. So therefore do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones. So he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. Genesis 50, verses 18 through 21. Numbers 22, verse 22. But God was angry because he was going, and the angel of the Lord took his stand in the way as an adversary against him. Now he was riding on his donkey, and his two servants were with him. Numbers 22, verse 22. Judges 15, verse 19. But God split the hollow place that is in Lehi, so that water came out of it. When he drank, his strength returned and he revived. Therefore he named it En Hakkore, which is in Lehi to this day. Judges 15, verse 19. 1 Samuel 23, verse 14. David stayed in the wilderness, in the strongholds, and remained in the hill country in the wilderness of Ziph. And Saul sought him every day, but God did not deliver him into his hand. 1 Samuel 23, verse 14. Psalm 52, verse 5. But God will break you down forever. He will snatch you up and tear you away from your tent, and uproot you from the land of the living. Selah. Psalm 52, verse 5. Psalm 64, verse 7. But God will shoot at them with an arrow. Suddenly they will be wounded. Psalm 64, verse 7. Psalm 75, verse 7. But God is the judge. He puts down one and exalts another. Psalm 75, verse 7. Mark 2, verse 7. Why does this man speak that way? He is blaspheming. Who can forgive sins but God alone? Mark 2, verse 7. Luke 5, verse 21. The scribes and the Pharisees began to reason, saying, "Who is this man who speaks blasphemies? Who can forgive sins but God alone?" Luke 5, verse 21. Luke chapter 12, verse 20. But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your soul is required of you, and now who will own what you have prepared?" Luke chapter 12, verse 20. Luke chapter 16, verse 15. And he said to them, "You are those who justify yourselves in the sight of men, but God knows your hearts. For that which is highly esteemed among men is detestable in the sight of God." Luke chapter 16, verse 15. Acts 2, verse 24. But God raised him up again, putting an end to the agony of death, since it was impossible for him to be held in its power. Acts 2, verse 24. Acts 7, verse 6. But God spoke to this effect, that his descendants would be aliens in a foreign land, and that they would be enslaved and mistreated for 400 years. Acts 7, verse 6. Acts 7, verse 42. But God turned away and delivered them up to serve the host of heaven. As it is written in the book of the prophets, "It was not to me that you offered victims and sacrifices 40 years in the wilderness, was it, O house of Israel?" Acts 7, verse 42. Acts 13, verse 30. But God raised him from the dead. Acts 13, verse 30. Romans 5, verse 8. But God demonstrates his own love toward us, in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Romans 5, verse 8. 1 Corinthians 3, verses 6 and 7. I planted, Apollos watered, but God was causing the growth. So then neither the one who plants nor the one who waters is anything, but God who causes the growth. 1 Corinthians 3, verses 6 and 7. 1 Corinthians 6, verse 13. Food is for the stomach, and the stomach is for food, but God will do away with both of them. Yet the body is not for immorality, but for the Lord, and the Lord is for the body. 1 Corinthians 6, verse 13. 1 Corinthians 7, verse 15. Yet, if the unbelieving one leaves, let him leave. The brother or the sister is not under bondage in such cases, but God has called us to peace. 1 Corinthians 7, verse 15. 1 Corinthians 12, verse 24. Whereas our more presentable members have no need of it, but God has so composed the body, giving more abundant honor to that member which lacked. 1 Corinthians 12, verse 24. 1 Corinthians 15, verse 38. But God gives it a body just as he wished, and to each of the seeds a body of its own. 1 Corinthians 15, verse 38. 2 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 6. But God, who comforts the depressed, comforted us by the coming of Titus. 2 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 6. Galatians 3, verse 18. For if the inheritance is based on law, it is no longer based on a promise, but God has granted it to Abraham by means of a promise. Galatians 3, verse 18. Ephesians 2, verse 4. But God, being rich in mercy, because of his great love with which he loved us. Ephesians 2, verse 4. Philippians 2, verse 27. For indeed he was sick to the point of death, but God had mercy on him, and not on him only, but also on me, so that I would not have sorrow upon sorrow. Philippians 2, verse 27. 1 Thessalonians 2, verse 4. But just as we have been approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel, so we speak, not as pleasing men, but God, who examines our hearts. 1 Thessalonians 2, verse 4.